Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Hello everyone, and thanks so much for joining us for this Saturday's edition of Alaska Weather. I'm Dave Percy. Satellite imagery today, not a lot of changes, not a lot of big changes going on. Had some clouds drop down into the northeast interior right through here. That held the temperatures up, especially overnight from what they were the previous night. And those clouds dissipating as we go through the afternoon now. Some of that spreading southward, but again, most of it staying over in Canada and actually sliding off to the southeast. Down along the southeast coast, another nice chilly day down in that area. Some snow showers developing here with a thing just off the coast, but as you can see, they were pulling back away from the coast, so staying dry. A few more clouds down Prince of Wales Island, Dixon entrance. But temperatures everywhere this afternoon in the mid-temperature table were below freezing. Otherwise, clear south central Alaska. Some clouds out here over the southwest interior developed, and lower clouds out over the Bering Sea brought snow showers here from the Alaska Peninsula, Port Hayden down to 1.5 miles, and some snow and fog this afternoon at times over to Cold Bay. Back up just a few flurries around the Pribilofs and maybe the eastern Aleutians. Out to the west, frontal system here, really most of the moisture being directed to the north there with the jet stream around a big upper level high over the interior. This portion pushing off to the east with a southern jet, so this boundary here hanging up right along the central Aleutians. And today, areas of rain from Atka and Adak back to and now past Shemya. Still west of the eastern Aleutians, that area low clouds, quite extensive out there with just a few flurries and snow showers. A little more activity over the Alaska Peninsula than there was over the Pribilofs this afternoon. Otherwise, light winds, and again, the clouds over the northeast dissipating. Areas of clouds under that high up along the north slope on out to the Arctic coast there, but also some breaks. A lot of clear reports showing up this afternoon. And then this 1,038 millibar high there over the Yukon. Very good gradient, keeping those winds gusting up to 60, 65 miles an hour or so, mainly through Lynn Canal there, with lighter winds on down to the south. Surface trough here, reflection of the upper level feature, but again, all those snow showers off the coast and initially shifting off to the south. For tonight, clear and windy again, wind chill advisory tonight and tomorrow, up toward White Pass, Klondike Highway, wind chills at times 30 to 40 degrees below zero. And those strong winds continuing, pretty breezy right on down, especially on the inside waters. Lighter winds out along the coast. Really light winds for the Gulf of Alaska, Prince William Sound, and the North Gulf Coast, as well as Kodiak Island. In fact, all of the interior as well. Looking for light winds a day today, much like a day tomorrow. Much like today, tomorrow will be like today. So high pressure, light winds up on the north slope there on out to the Arctic coast. Still looking at some cloudiness here over the southwest interior, but most of the precipitation tonight will be over the Alaska Peninsula and off the coast here, and that weakening front bringing some rain and snow eastward toward Nikolsky, and another system developing and swinging some more moisture and locally windy conditions into the far western Aleutians. Now for tomorrow, we'll see this warm front spreads chance of rain in across the eastern Aleutians there. Southerly winds, warmer temperatures spreading northward with that feature there. Higher pressure drying out behind it. So it looks like some maybe some light snow moving into the Pribilofs tomorrow. Definitely an increase in the winds there. Small craft advisories. This old trough up here keeping a chance of some flurries there from Nunivak Island, maybe inland, mostly northwestward there. South of St. Lawrence Islands, look for a few more clouds there tomorrow. Still clear for the Seward Peninsula, Kotzebue Sound. Much of the interior valleys, could be some patchy areas of low clouds in there, but generally it would be clear, definitely dry and snow-free. Good VFR right down to the North Gulf Coast again and much of interior Alaska. Kodiak Island, look for a sunny day tomorrow with light winds, and the Panhandle a little bit lighter on the winds, still strongest up here Lynn Canal, Glacier Bay, and pretty gusty on the inside waters there, but really Lynn Canal, the only place that's carrying a gale warning now with lighter winds out along the coast. And then for Monday, you can see high shifts eastward a little bit, but the gradient really slackens due to this low center mostly pulling off to the southeast and weakening there. So even though it's still 1,035 millibars there, quite less of a gradient as you can see along the southeast coast, although may still have some gales out in the north there for northern Lynn Canal, otherwise looking much lighter on down to the south. Even along the coast, pretty light, slight seas, no wind to speak of, barely a breeze through the North Gulf Coast, Prince William Sound, 5 to 15 knots in this area. For Monday, watch for the clouds to increase there across Kodiak Island, but staying dry. Again, light winds. Another fair day across interior Alaska. Temperatures in the afternoon staying well below zero, and maybe a few clouds on the Arctic coast. But now out to the west, we've got some changes going on. This front, low center, tracking northward farther to the east than the previous ones did, and that's going to drive that front right up to the coastline. South to southeast winds pulling warmer air in, so rain for the Alaska Peninsula. Mixture of rain or snow along the southwest coast, Nunivak Island, but inland areas, whatever makes it this far east, will be in the form of snow. Snow and blowing snow, St. Lawrence Island. Look for gusts maybe up to 45 miles per hour there. Chance of snow develops on the southern Seward Peninsula from roughly Elam westward there to Nome and then up through the Bering Strait. Some of that moisture could even curve back around and catch Kivalina, more likely Point Hope and Cape Lisburne. Otherwise, the Arctic coast stays dry with winds now becoming westerly or with a more westerly component, but staying on the light side there, maybe 15 knots on the eastern Arctic coast. Another system, stronger yet here, pushing eastward. Gale force winds, rain into the Adak-Atka area, and it looks like this low will track right up into the Bering Sea there, so that's going to bring that southerly wind condition. Will begin to advance northward into Tuesday and Wednesday as the upper level ridge shifts off to the east a little bit there. Otherwise, looking pretty good here for the next couple of days over the interior and Panhandle. This afternoon, temperatures range from the teens to mid-20s along the southeast coast here, depending on where you were, 16 at Skagway, and the greater Juneau area up to 22. 21 this afternoon is all they reached there at Sitka, with Pelican also receiving 21, 25 at Klawock, Annette pushed up to 30, and North Gulf Coast, teens, 15 Yakutat, 18 Cordova, Valdez around 20, much colder there in Copper River Basin, McCarthy just 26 below, 30 below at Northway, and then 17 below at Fairbanks. I've had 9 below there at Willow this afternoon compared to 9 above at Talkeetna, otherwise 10s at Anchorage, Palmer, Kenai, mid-20s, Seward and Homer. Not too bad there comparatively, mid-20s, light winds, and up north of the mountains there, farther north, we've got 24 degrees below zero over at, I think that was, well, it wasn't Beaver, it was 19 below at Chalk-Yitzhak, minus 27 at Eagle, 5 above there at Arctic Village. The Arctic coast rising above zero today, 4 degrees Kaktovik, 3 at Barrow, but New Exit just inland, 17 below, the minus 7 at Point Lade, then 12 above at Point Hope, 12 below Kivalina, minus 17 at Kotzebue, or I'm sorry, minus 9 at Kotzebue, that's Buckland at 17 below. And that same reading also at Huslia, but a little elevation there. Indian Mountain, 11 above. By comparison, Bettles, 11 below zero, minus 20 even at McGrath. And then right around zero here over the Yukon-Kuskokwim Delta, even out to the coast, Nunivak Island there, Macoriac, 2 degrees above zero, 25 though over at Savunga, with 1 at Wales. Out in the Bering Sea, 26 Point George, or St. George, 32 even there, right at the freeze mark for St. Paul, 36 Nikolsky, lower 40s out to the west. Alaska Peninsula, 30s, cooling dramatically here as you go northeast, down to 10 degrees at King Salmon, with upper 30s for Kodiak Island. Lows for tonight, dropping into the 20s, upper 20s there, or down into the 20s depending on where you are in Kodiak or across the island. Single numbers, Bristol Bay, Upper 20s, mid 30s, Alaska Peninsula, staying just under 40 degrees for the Aleutians. 20s right up to St. Lawrence Island. Less clouds again breaking out, so temperatures up here over the Yukon Flats dropping 45 below zero tonight. Some areas may even just about reach 50 below. Otherwise, teens and 20s below there, Tanana Valley, maybe down to 30 below in the Copper River Basin. Single numbers in teens, another chilly night here for the southeast coast. And then tomorrow, again, about like today, temperatures ranging from the mid-teens to the lower 30s. And otherwise in the 20s, teens, lower teens here across south central Alaska, even the North Gulf Coast. Below zero, Copper River Basin, Tanana Valley below zero, and look for highs in the mid-minus 30s for the Yukon Flats. Milder, just above zero out toward the Arctic coast, upper 20s, St. Lawrence Island. Warming there for Nunivak Island, 24, 38 St. Paul, 40s for the Aleutians, and approaching 40 even for the Alaska Peninsula. Flying weather late tonight, early tomorrow morning, looking really good. Most of this stuff will be along or just off the coast there, the marginal VFR. IFR will be even farther off the coast for the Arctic area. Otherwise, good VFR, maybe picking up some marginal stuff here, Kuskokwim Bay, possibly as far east as Bethel, but more likely out along the coast down to the Alaska Peninsula. Kodiak Island VFR, across the Gulf, Panhandle VFR, marginal conditions staying offshore. And then with that front, some IFR getting into Shimianatu, which by tomorrow afternoon kind of expands and enhances as it pushes eastward to Atka, spreading into the Pribilof Islands, marginal VFR overtaking the Fox Islands. Otherwise, areas of marginal VFR, Alaska Peninsula. Now we've got IFR showing up there from Nunivak Island across St. Lawrence Island. Staying pretty good up along the Arctic coast there, as well as the North Slope. Good VFR right down into the Gulf of Alaska and across the Panhandle. Passes once again today. All will be VFR tomorrow with Anatuvik and Adigan wide open. And again, the ceilings visibility is unlimited for Lake Clark, Merrill, Rainy, as well as windy. Isabel and Mentasta, good VFR. Tanita wide open. Good day for Portage. Chilkoot and White, VFR. And for the freezing levels, all the way down to Kodiak Island, off the coast, even down off the coast of the Panhandle, down to the Queen Charlottes. But seeing some warming taking place out west here, 2,000 to 4,000 feet now coming in on those southerly winds, and that's going to continue to expand northward and eventually eastward here by Monday, and continue warming even into Tuesday with that next storm pulling up into the Bering Sea. Otherwise, looking at icing, none to speak of for the interior or the Panhandle. Have to come out here to Unalaska, out west to Adak and north into the Bering Sea. Just light to very isolated moderate rime icing, but about 3,000 to 5,000 feet or so. Jet stream showing westerlies strong, 190 knots here. Splits right in this position with actually one branch heading off to the east. Southeasterlies 60 knots across the northern Bering Sea. Big upper level high holds over mainland Alaska for a couple of more days. Still have those northerly winds aloft, 60 knots, supporting the gale force winds in Lynn Canal and the windier conditions for the northern Panhandle, at least through tomorrow. 9,000 foot winds here showing ridging right up across Kodiak into the interior. West of that, we've got winds picking up pretty good along the coast tomorrow, 30 knots across Nunivak Island, 20 knots Alaska Peninsula picking up to 40 knots, 35 to 40 knots here, Pribilofs down to the eastern Aleutians, and then 25 knots from the southwest for the central and western areas. Light variable winds under the high here for a good portion, just about all the interior Alaska, a little more westerly there on the Arctic coast, and then northeasterlies 25 to 30 again from the northern Panhandle. Lighter winds, but still offshore flow, keeping it dry for the Panhandle. And for 3,000 feet, same pattern here, high pressure south of Kodiak, ridging right up into the interior. Very light winds, none to speak of really, becoming south but staying light, maybe 20 knots there near Togiak Bay. Got to get out here to the eastern Aleutians, picking up to 30 knots. East-northeast here over the northern Panhandle, this low center, down to the southeast, 20 to 25 knots. And again, that's going to drop off and weaken, so these winds will even be lighter on Monday. Out to the west, 25 knots, 25 to 30 knots, 40 knots here with more gradient there across the southern Bering Sea, 40 to 50 knots, but that's way out there. Otherwise, we're looking at 20 to 25 knots southwesterlies for the Aleutians. And as far as turbulence goes, smooth here for the interior, Kodiak, Alaska Peninsula, Kenai Peninsula, right up to the Arctic coast. And then with the increasing winds with that front, occasional moderate chop there for the eastern Aleutians over to about Adak, below about 4,000 feet. And maybe some bumpy conditions developing with those increasing winds for the Pribilofs, and that'll extend back out across the Aleutians. And once again tomorrow, occasional moderate chop below about 4,000 here for the southeast coast. Better conditions though out along the coastline up toward Yakutat. And after the break, I'll be back with the ice edge and the marine forecasts.
Now, one of the things you want from a weather observation is the altimeter setting. So let's take a look at how a METAR does show the altimeter setting. First of all, the altimeter setting is really easy to pick up on a METAR because the field starts with the letter A, and that indicates that actually that it's reported in inches of mercury. But you can just remember it the same way by thinking that the A stands for altimeter, because it could just as well. So what you do is read all 4 digits and just put a decimal point in there. This altimeter setting is 29.92. Now let's assume the airport has a little bit of fog. I think this qualifies as fog right here. Well, you'd find out about fog in the present weather portion of the METAR report, but you might not find out everything you'd like to know about the fog. All it would tell you is that there's fog. Let's assume you'd like to know, well, what percentage of the sky is obscured by fog? Well, to find out something like that, you'd have to look in the remarks portion of the METAR report, and the remarks field is the last field in the METAR report, and it will always begin with the contraction RMK. Now, the remarks portion is divided into 2 parts. The first part is called automated, manual, plain language. Now, what that means is automated code, manual code, and plain language text. And what it does is, in general, that elaborates on something you found in the body of the report. It tells you more about it, just like we would in fog in this particular case. Now, this is the portion of the remarks section that the pilot is going to find most useful. Now, here are some of the contractions you might see in the remarks portion. You might see tornado, or AO1 or AO2, which tells you the type of the auto station, the automatic station there. Peak wind, wind shift, tower visibility, surface visibility, lightning, rain began, rain ended, and it'll tell you a time. Thunderstorm began, thunderstorm ended, that kind of information. Or it might tell you the size of the hail, or that there's Virga south, or that how much of the sky is obscured by smoke. Here it's 5/8 to 7/8 because that's the criteria for broken. Or you might find out the ceiling is from 400 feet variable to 800 feet. The pressure's rising rapidly, or the pressure's falling rapidly. Or you might find a sea level pressure. These are the kinds of things that you're going to find in the remarks section of the METARs, all very vital information. And it's also where the observer can add some plain language remarks to fully describe conditions at the airport to give you more information. Now, let's take a look at some examples of what remarks might look like. You might have a remark that says something like this. It might say peak wind from 280 degrees at 45 knots, and it occurred at 1.5 past the hour. You might have something like that. Or another remark might be something like this. Wind shift, there was a wind shift at 1.5 minutes past the hour caused by frontal passage. Or you might have a remark that looks like this, just a few examples of these things. You might have a remark that says that the hail began at 1:07 after the hour, and it ended at 4:0, and a thunderstorm began at 1:05 after the hour. The thunderstorm was overhead, moving east, and the hail is 3/4 of an inch in diameter. Not a great day, I would think. Now, let's take a look at another field, and that's the field of sea level pressure. You can see it down here. Now, the sea level pressure is always in hectopascals. No, that is not the name of a famous artist. That's not who that is at all. Hectopascals is the same value as millibars. To read it, put a decimal point in front of the last digit and either a 9 or a 10 at the front of it. Let's take a look at how we're going to read these now. Here we have sea level pressure. Put a decimal point in front of the last digit and a 9 or a 10 at the front of it, whichever one makes it closest to 1,000. So let's put a 10 in front of this one. That'll make it closest to 1,000. And it comes to 1013.2 hectopascals. Now, let's do another one. Here we put a decimal point in front of the last digit. In this case, to make it closest to 1,000, we'll put a 9 here, and you get 999.8 hectopascals. Now, once again, that's the same value as millibars. And finally, if you see CLP, SLP, NO, that means sea level pressure not available. Now, some other METAR remarks you might run into is something like this. You might see one that says, remark, and it means lightning is observed in the clouds. A thunderstorm began at 25 minutes past the hour. The thunderstorm is overhead, moving east, and the sea level pressure in this case is 13.2 hectopascals. Let's do a couple more. Let's take a look at remarks. Here's one. Here we have rain that does not reach the ground. What's the name of that? Virga is the name of rain that does not reach the ground. So we have Virga southwest. It means rain that does not reach the ground southwest. Let's do one more. Let's assume that we have a remark that looks like this. It says, the remark, the scattered layer is variable to broken at 1,400 feet. It indicates that you have a scattered layer at 1,400 feet and it's variable to broken.
Welcome back. Ice Edge looking like this afternoon. The analysis, Bristol Bay up along the southwest coast. Now we have that blue area or turquoise area there is 1 to 4/10 ice there, so starting to pinch off here from the Bering Strait northward, and some new ice in the Chukchi Sea there, so that area kind of diminishing as well. But the prospect is for the first of next week, especially Monday when that front comes up to the coast, southeast winds, warmer conditions, so that's going to start melting this back the first of next week and probably into the middle and latter part of the week as well. And some of this might start pulling off the coast a little bit there as well. Otherwise, Cook Inlet looked like some ice going southward with the tide there toward the Forelands. Otherwise, not a lot of change. And for the marine forecast tomorrow, still 40-knot winds out of the north, mainly northern Lynn Canal, but looking at a gradual decrease here even tomorrow. 30 knots for Stevens Passage, northwest 20 Clarence Strait. Small craft advisories here on the south coast. Gales 35 knots in this stretch here. And then for Monday, still carrying a gale, 35 knots, northern Lynn Canal, but as you can see, much lighter, 10 to 20 knots primarily out of the north for the central and southern inside waters, with those seas only running 2 to 4 feet. Really light winds now comparatively off the coast. Gales and small crafts you'll have tomorrow, with those seas coming down 3 to 5 feet, north winds 15 knots, a little more northwesterly, so really laying down for Monday. And then for Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet, northeast or variable to northeast at about 10 with slight seas. That same pattern in all through Cook Inlet. Northwesterlies here 15 to 20 knots from Kamishak Bay down across the Barrens. Northwest 20 there on the east side of Kodiak. Light variable winds for Shelikof Strait. Really light winds here for the North Gulf Coast with those seas down to 4 to 5 feet. And then for Monday, westerlies at about 15 here on the east side of Kodiak, southwest 15, Shelikof Strait, and then 20-knot westerlies here for the Barren Islands and the North Gulf Coast, getting a little more northwesterly there over toward Middleton Island. Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet, no change, light winds continuing, variable to northeast or north, and seas also down to 2 feet. For Bristol Bay tomorrow, east 15, 2-foot seas, southeast 20 there blowing across the peninsula, with seas on the Bering Sea side running about 4 feet and up to 8 feet here in the Pacific side. So that's good for small craft advisories due to the seas there. But Castle Cape to Sitkinak, really light winds down, seas only 4 feet. And then for Monday, front comes in, southerlies right now looks like they won't reach gale force at about 30 knots, and small craft advisories also for Bristol Bay. And from Castle Cape here to Sitkinak, and these seas coming up 10 to 12 feet with the winds, and about 7 feet there in the Bering Sea side. And for the Aleutians, tomorrow gale force southerlies out here, 35 knots for the far western Aleutians, 16-foot seas. And south to southwest, right around 30 knots here for the roughly from about Amchitka Island all the way over toward Nikolsky. And then they go southeast 20 to 25 there for the Fox Islands. And for Monday, now we've got southerlies here, especially on Alaska Island, south 25 to 30 knots, 7 to 12-foot seas. Then we pick up the gales just west of Nikolsky, 35 knots, 12 to 15-foot seas. Those increase a little bit there, 35 to 40 knots for the central Aleutians. And then 35-knot winds here west of Adak, drop back a little bit to 30 knots there toward Shemya. And up for the southwest coast, southeast winds tomorrow, especially tomorrow afternoon here at about 20 knots with 4 to 5-foot seas. Southeast 30 there, 9-foot seas for the Pribilof, still carrying heavy freezing spray here in northern Bering Sea up to St. Lawrence Island with those easterly winds 20 to 30 knots and seas up to 10 feet there for the St. Matthew Island zone. And then for Monday, southeast winds 30 knots, so the front right up through this area, actually kind of bending back like that. 30-knot winds, pretty uniform wind pattern here, as well as the seas with 8-foot seas right up to St. Lawrence Island, 10-foot seas again for the St. Matthew Island area. But behind the front, winds more southwest, lighter for the Pribilofs, coming down to 20 knots, seas hanging in though at 9 feet. And for the Arctic coast, east side, light variable winds tomorrow, 5 to 10 knots, not much going on there. Then pick it up from the southeast here for the central coast at 15. And that extends all the way down here to Cape Beaufort. Then it gets kind of light and variable again. Easterlies 15 knots from Wales to Cape Thompson. Then the outlook for Monday, southeast responding to that system down south, so 20 knots there from Wales to Cape Thompson. South 15, and then light southwesterlies turn light westerly there for the central coast. And then we've got 15 knots in the forecast here from the west to southwest over to Demarcation Point. Looking at tonight's forecast again, no change over the interior here except less clouds up in the northeast than what you saw overnight last night and this morning. So colder temperatures down to 45, 50 below. No change all the way down to the Gulf of Alaska. No change for the Panhandle. A few clouds here, mostly cloudy for the southwest areas, but most of the moisture staying off the coast. Weakening front there, heading toward Nikolsky, but not doing much. Another one back behind will push eastward. Now we've got a warm front spreading warmer conditions, rain into the eastern Aleutians. No change over the interior. Again, fair conditions, dry. Areas of low clouds probably forming here under the ridge in some areas, staying windy for the northern Panhandle. Then those winds diminish, especially along the coast. The next day, this front brings warmer conditions, moisture into the southwest. Have a great evening.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.